Hello and welcome to week 9 of LET 2150. Again, my name is Todd Hurley. I'm your instructor for the class. This week's class is on external systems in Raymond Foster's book, Police Technology. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll try to keep this relatively short this week. See here, Chapter 9, External Systems, again of the book. We'll go through these first couple of slides here relatively quickly. Assignments, same thing. Everything's posted on assignments. Thanks for everybody's patience on getting this one video up here. Had some stuff I had to take care of yesterday. Again, symbols of what's coming available in this particular chapter. We'll have one discussion board this week, and that's indicated in this slide. Okay, the learning objectives. One, we'll talk about the history and development of the NCIC. Our National Crime Information Center, NCIC. We'll talk about uniform crime reporting versus and the National Crime Victimization Survey. We'll also talk about NIBRS, or National Incident-Based Reporting System, and Ohio's version of that, OIBRS. Potential sources of government information, government versus commercial databases, and then regional information sharing schemes. Sources of information. There are two broad classifications of information. The first one being public records. Public records are records that are available to the public about anything that has happened. And most government records are going to be public records, except for the second category here, the investigative records. Anything that typically is pertinent to an ongoing or active investigation. They're a little bit more restricted and aren't released for public consumption. The external sources of information are often more extensive than locals. So what that's meaning is, based on, because offenders move around, they move from area to area. The external sources or information that gets fed up from the local or small agencies into the NCIC database, those will be more extensive. They'll be more detailed. They'll contain information that crosses jurisdictional boundaries. And then that's the second point. Smaller agencies don't have the resources to maintain large, extensive databases. That's why we try to keep that at a state and a national level. And many crimes are complex and they cross jurisdictional lines. The National Crime Information Center, NCIC, is the first database with nationwide access. Each participating agency is responsible to update, enter, or delete their own records. This is done through the Control Terminal Agency, that CTA. The Control Terminal Agency is the agency that's actually querying that information for its officers, and it is the agency that is controlling their information that's entered into NCIC. And then the last thing, the National Interstate Identification Index also receives offender information from the Control Terminal agencies as well. So it's another source that information gets fed into. NCIC 2000. NCIC 2000 has reduced fingerprint and photographic information of wanted persons to digital information. Most agencies today, at some point, whether it be photographic information or the fingerprint information, gets converted to digital information, so it's available for anybody that subscribes to the NCIC database. This allows agencies to submit the same information in a digital format. Ultimately, it will allow police officers to access fingerprint and photographic data from their vehicles. So the officers today have the ability to query that information and have that information, especially photographic information. I can imagine you can understand how handy it would be to have a BMV photo of the person that they pull over, so they notice that one says, "Hey, I am John Smith." They can walk up. They go up. They have their initial interaction with the person in the vehicle, grab a driver's license from them, some sort of an identification, come back, run that information, and actually verify, yep, that is John Smith that I have pulled over, or no, it isn't. and I need to do further investigation. NCIC 2000 also provides the software application free of charge. The system is designed to run with standard computers and communication equipment. Local agencies must acquire the hardware necessary to run. So essentially what they're saying is if you have the systems to run these, the hardware systems, the computers and such, then they'll provide that software to you free of charge and give you access to that information by running that NCIC 2000 software. What that leads a lot of time into is some of the legal questions that the officers run into. A police officer can check for warrants during a brief detention. So I pull you over, I run your license plate information, your driver's license information. I can check that against NCIC or the state, in our state, Ohio, the leads to the leads network and check that information. So can an officer take fingerprints to verify identity? Is the officer escalating the detention by taking these prints? Is that going to, while I'm detaining somebody, by asking for their fingerprint, is that going to agitate or escalate the situation? And then is taking fingerprints during a detention, a seizure, is it a violation of Fourth Amendment rights? Keep that in mind because I think you're going to see that on this week's discussion board. So the next slide here is about safety issues. Some of these safety issues that that are created sometimes during a traffic stop, the violator has more perfect information than the officer, and that's almost every traffic stop. The violator knows whether they were speeding or not, or whether they were actually speeding to flee from a crime. And one of the things that we talked about in earlier chapters, fragmentation, is one of the main issues why we don't have that, the officer doesn't have that perfect information. Somebody may have robbed a 7-Eleven in, say, Columbus, the city of Columbus, drove 3 miles south into Grove City, and that information that has not reached the NCIC database yet. And so a Grove City officer pulls them over their speeding and says, okay, writes them a ticket for speeding, but then doesn't know the fact that they were actually a suspect in the 7-Eleven crime. So that's a big contributing factor and it makes some of these safety issues, or it magnifies some of these safety issues because that the lack of information approaching the violator for the apprentice or for gathering any information is somewhat dangerous. The violator could take the opportunity to flee or attack the officer. So again, the officer may be going up just thinking, hey, I'm going to write a speeding ticket because this person was speeding, but the violator may actually, hey, is he stopping me because I robbed the 7-Eleven? So that's what we're talking about, not having perfect information. The next topic we're going to talk about is uniform crime reporting. The U.S. Department of Justice has two programs to gather statistics on crime. One is UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting, and the other is the National Crime Victimization Survey. Those two kind of work hand in hand, and information is supplemented by one and the other. Agencies voluntarily report crimes to the FBI monthly, and this is done most of the time through the state. So in Ohio, we report crimes to the state, and then those crimes and then are combined as a state and then are sent to the national level. So it consists of crimes categorized as Part 1 or Part 2. It's easier to say, what's in Part 1. Part 1 crimes are homicide, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Those are going to be the Part 1 crimes. Most of the other ones are going to be Part 2 crimes. They may not fit that Part 2 category if they are just a crime that is against a local ordinance or law. So that's something to keep in mind there. The National Crime Victimization Survey, the NCVS statistics come from the victims themselves. So there's going to be a little bit of difference in terms of the data here. Really, that the NCVS will complement UCR information. And one of the reasons why it differs a little bit is many victims do not report their crimes. And so there are going to be a disparity here, but UCR and NCVS together provide a more comprehensive picture of the crimes and how they occurred and who they have affected. And here's the differences. In UCR, rape only reports female victims, whereas in NCVS, that's going to both report male and female victims. UCR legal definitions of crimes important because of the specific intent, whereas in the NCVS, if you're a victim of a crime, those won't differ as much. But they do not report on the larger things: homicide, arson, commercial crimes, and crimes against children under the age of 12. So the similarities here: both UCR and NCVS give law enforcement personnel information that can be used strategically. Remember, we talked about the two types of information: strategic information and tactical information. Strategic information is going to be information to help adjust manpower, whereas tactical information is going to be information you use to assist in handling a specific event or scene. So the one thing is that there isn't going to be any tactical value to the information, and the information provided is a flat file. It is just going to be a straightforward kind of list of information that comes out of that. The next part here is NIBRS, or the National Incident-Based Reporting System. NIBRS is really, Ohio has gone to a NIBRS state, meaning that there's a slight variation to the National Incident-Based Reporting System. We call it OIBRS, report of all crimes that occurred during a single occurrence or incidents, burglary, assault, whatever. They follow the hierarchy rule of the UCR, but NIBRS looks at the components of the crimes as well as the crimes themselves. So motive operation, how the crimes were committed, more specific details of the crimes. And so that's why the state of Ohio has moved to incident-based reporting system, or OIBRS, or NIBRS-based reporting. Byproducts of that are it's likely going to replace UCR in the future. So in our agency here, we still have some ties to some of the UCR stuff because of the legacy and how we want to report some of that stuff. But we are doing all incident-based reporting, and we are reporting to the state those crimes. That is all incident-based reporting. One of the problems, or one of the challenges, is that they're significantly more detailed. So there will be more information that's available to cross-analyze, but also that requires officers to spend more time completing those reports versus the UCR reports. And so there tends to be a little bit of resistance or hesitance to that because they are taking more time. Instead of taking a half hour to generate a report, it may take them an hour. And so there's a bit more reluctance to make that change. But we've moved past that, and I think the officers are starting to understand that a little bit better. And we're actually into a paperless system now where they can sit in the cruiser, fill out the paperwork. It's submitted electronically. The supervisor approves that or rejects that, sends it back to them, and then it gets sent to our records people. But eventually, and I think we're at that point, that's the point why I mentioned the paperless, is we're at that point where we are becoming more effective, and the information we are collecting is being more helpful. The next thing we talk about is here's a list of some of the government databases. I'll let you look through those. Some of those is the National White Collar Crime Center, Financial Crime Enforcement Network, the RISNet, the RISSnet, the Regional Information Sharing Systems, driver's license and motor vehicle registration information. State and local police officers access driver's license information through the agency RMS and to the state authority. So we access that information through Ohio's LEADS network. Accessing license information from another state is done through inlets. It's a national law enforcement telecommunications system. But again, that's all handled when your controlled terminal agency is in contact with the LEADS network, and all that's done kind of behind the scenes. Commercial sources of information, they go from anywhere from catalog sales, some of the direct marketing information. Companies will collect and organize information and sell that information. So a lot of times when you sign up for credit cards, be aware that that information could be sold and it could become part of a commercial source of information. Personal information firms also collect information from public records. So marriage certificates, death certificates, birth certificates, civil actions, arrest, court actions, any of those things can be, are a lot of times are collected and then organized and then sold. So that leads us into what I mentioned earlier, this week's discussion board. So based on your knowledge of the Constitution, go to the discussion board and post your response to the following. Does scanning the driver's fingerprint constitute a violation of the Fourth Amendment? What about the passengers? Why and why not? So again, these are questions actually questions that have been debated in the courts in recent years. So there isn't, because it's gone through the court system, there is some case law, but there is, I'm interested to see what you guys have to say with respect to this particular question. So that's the end of this chapter. If you have any questions about this week, remember, I think I sent an announcement out as well. The email went out to everybody that this week we have quiz number 3. Quiz number 3 is on, I believe, chapters or the new technology and chapters 8 and 9. Remember that we've also changed the time frame. You can start taking the quiz as early as Thursday, and you have to complete it by Sunday night at midnight. So again, trying to consolidate that everything kind of ends up on Sunday night at midnight. I'll do most of my grading during the day on Monday. I have it this week. I'm actually in training myself, so I'll try to get to that this evening. But hope that answers any questions you have on this week's information. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and hope you guys have a good week.
Okay.